and welcome to Dorset Council's Licensing Committee. Welcome to you all this morning, and I'd also like to welcome all of you that are watching via the link. Sorry we're a few minutes late. We did have some technical issues, but we have now sorted those. Okay, can I have apologies? Elaine, do you have any apologies?
Thank you. We have a few apologies today. We've got apologies from Councillor John Andrews, Councillor Kate Weller, Councillor Derek Beer, Councillor Kathy Lugg, Councillor Susan Cocking and Councillor Mike Dyer.
Thank you, Elaine. Due to the absence of our Vice Chairman, Councillor John Andrews, we do need to appoint a Vice Chairman for this meeting this morning, so I propose Councillor Brian Heatley to Vice Chair this morning. Can I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that. Councillor Let's Right, I will second Councillor Heatley as Vice Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Fry. Can I ask all members here today, before you speak, could you introduce yourselves? That would be really useful for the ease of the people watching via the link. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is agenda item 2. Are you happy that I sign off the minutes? And those minutes are from the 27th of January 2022, the 17th of November 2021, 15th of June 2021, and the meeting of the 22nd of October 2020, and sign the minutes of the 26th of July 2019, which were approved at the meeting on the 22nd of October 2020 but did not get signed. Are you happy that I sign those minutes?
Yeah. Yes, agree.
Now I'll show hands. Everybody's in favour for the signature of the minutes, and I will do that after the meeting. Thank you. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public participation? No, thank you. Okay, so I will now move on to agenda item 5. In that regard, I will now pass over to our licensing team leader, and this is to determine the maximum level of fares that can be charged by a Hackney carriage proprietor and to set the fees for the private hire and Hackney carriage licence regimes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear that all right?
Yes.
Brilliant. You have the report before you with all the supporting documentation, which I know you will have all read. We have had 2 further comments made before the close of the consultations on the 15th of March, but after the report was written, and they have been circulated as supplementary information. I have also sent out a corrected Appendix 7.1, which was the tariff for the Dorset area excluding Weymouth, because we omitted on the first advertisement to put the Sunday times on, which should have been on there. That version has been publicised in the paper, so that's the correct one. If I can start with the fees, one of the basic principles that we must adhere to when we're working out the fees is that the cost of the council functioning of the licensing of the Hackney carriages and the private hires must be covered by the fees. No profit should be made to fund any other function in the council, and equally we should be ensuring that the costs are covered to ensure that any additional burden is not placed onto the council taxpayer. We have calculated the average time taken per application, including all of the phone calls, all the reminders and all the other associated costs with processing an application when we've worked out these fees, and you have the breakdown of that. These have been cross-checked with the gross amount that it costs to run this part of the licensing service, and then we've benchmarked it against the predecessor fees and against other local authority fees, and you have all that information in your pack. The fees have been advertised and sent out to all the 2,399 licence holders, and we have had 13 comments back. As I indicated in the report, everyone who has requested a breakdown of the fees has been sent the information in Appendix 4. I've had no further comments back after that information has been sent out. Comments were made about the expectations that the unification of the council should see a reduction in fees. Most of the fees have been unchanged since 2016 and some since 2012 from the predecessor councils, well before the unitary came into being. And this exercise is about taking the true cost of providing the service and unifying the costs across the area. Tariff rises and fee rises normally go hand in hand, and many of the responses refer to this. And what I would say is that the fees are a one-off expense for licence holders. For vehicle drivers, vehicle owners, that's once a year. For the drivers, it's once every 3 years, and for operators, it is only once every 5 years. The tariff, however, increases therefore almost every single trip. There has been mention made of COVID and the lack of earning potential. The fees are reflective of the cost to the council to provide the licences, which is always going to increase slightly year on year. There have been comments about protecting the trade from the out-area operators. I would say that cross-border hiring is actually completely lawful. We do check all complaints and we will take action or inform neighbouring authorities if there is unlawful activity. Incidentally, we will also respond similarly to complaints of our drivers going out of area too. Complaints about taxi ranks have been passed to our parking services colleagues, and they have really appreciated the information supplied from the trade, particularly the times provided for the ranks in Wareham, and they will factor this into their patrols. However, the taxi fees do not and lawfully cannot subsidise that service. There is a comment about the unfairness of a single car operator against the multi-car operators. Different approaches have been taken in the past with operator fees. We have tried to categorise it for the number of cars, we have tried to put them in small, medium and large operators. It does present its own challenges, especially when people flex with their fleets, so they get more vehicles or they lose vehicles, and they move between the levels or the ranges. The enforcement element of the operator is calculated as the average time we expect officers to spend at an operator checking their records, as well as dealing with any complaints. And what I would say is that the new policy and the new statutory standards have actually created the most change to operators and their conditions, so that will be substantially more going forward. The Weymouth Vehicle Fee was queried, and talking about the cost of the garage inspections. But the garage inspections has never been part of the licence fee. The fee paid to the garages for their inspections is paid directly to them by the driver. We are getting a list of approved garages drawn up, properly covered by service level agreements and to test to the recognised national standard. We are also checking the fees that they will be charging. The fees being proposed are considerably lower than most of our neighbouring authorities. We will undertake, however, to revisit these fees every year, rather than, as has been the case in most areas, left them until a tariff rise was requested. We will also be reviewing on a 3-year rolling basis and adjust the fees if we are either creating a profit for the service or making a loss. If I could turn now to the tariff. Trying to bring 5 tariffs into line has been challenging, to say the least. We are proposing to keep Weymouth separate, as they are a defined zone within the policy, and the Taxi Association has requested a specific and fairly moderate rise. Most of the comments from the trade refer to the rising fuel prices. I have checked the RAC website for fuel prices since 2012, when some of the last fare changes were made. And there has not been a steady rise since that time. On the 2nd of April 2012, prices for fuel were actually at 138.96 for petrol and 146.16 for diesel. On the 5th of April 2016, the prices were 105.75 for petrol and 105.55 for diesel. They do fluctuate considerably. It is actually not until the 1st of the 10th, 2021, according to the RAC, that petrol prices have reached the 2012 levels. There is currently a large upturn on the fuel prices, but whether this will be a sustained uptake is debatable, and it's already been started to be reported in the national press that oil prices have started to come back down. We can and we should, in my view, review the fares once a year, so that any sustained fuel price increases can be taken into account then. Weymouth have previously tried introducing a fuel levy, which was referred to in one of the comments, but this actually goes against the principles of setting a maximum tariff and could lead to incredible confusion for the fare-paying public. It is fair to say that the responses to the fares have been largely geographically based. By levelling up the fares with a modest increase for the highest previous fares, there will always be some bigger winners. The fare is the maximum that can be charged or set on the meters, that they can be set to a lower rate perfectly lawfully. It only applies to Hackney carriages. Private hire vehicles are pre-booked, and the fares for those can be anything that the operator wants, and they are negotiated at the time of booking. I have included the league table of fares in the report, as this is the usual way to gauge where the fares sit against those in the rest of the country. Just for interest's sake, if you were to approve the fares suggested, then this would take Dorset Council to up between 19 and 23 on the league table, which is a £7.20 rate. There have been comments about the times that the tariffs change over. The majority of the previous councils had 11, so that is where we have gone for this time. But you could consider the request to change to an earlier tick over. A request has also been put in to add in the 30p extra per person, and I would recommend that that is added to the tariff. There have been requests for a larger increase, as I say, mainly originating from the Purbeck area, and it's fair to say that they have had a quite modest rise. We've also had a request to raise the soiling charge, which is for if somebody is sick in the vehicle. At the moment, on most of the tariffs, it's 70. We did put it up to 80, which is, I think, the maximum that we had on the Weymouth one. The request mentioned a Wiltshire charge at £100. I think that is actually perfectly reasonable, and I would recommend that is put onto the tariff cards. Just to remind you that setting fares is not just about drivers' incomes, it is also about the public expectation, so that they know how much a trip will cost before they embark on it. Any rise can also affect passenger numbers, as some people may think twice about getting into a cab that's going to be significantly more expensive. And I just would reiterate that private hires are not affected by this at all, and the fares for those will be negotiated at the time of booking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Aileen, and thank you for a really comprehensive report. As you know, obviously, Aileen has covered the fees and the tariffs in one. Councillors, do you have any questions? If I could ask you to state your name first and perhaps just say as to whether your question might be around either fees or tariffs for the ease of Aileen, should she need to respond.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor David Taylor here from Chance for St Mary. My concerns are, because of the drink drive campaigns we've had going over the Christmas and New Year periods and other festive periods, whether or not it will actually make people think twice about using a taxi. And I just think that we could actually incorporate another charging procedure to make sure that they think about leaving their car at home. It's just an idea which I was thinking of earlier.
We can certainly liaise with the police about targeting that sort of thing.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have any further questions? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Well, I was just very surprised at the low level of responses that you had. I would actually state that that probably means this is not controversial and quite acceptable. What are your thoughts on that? Only to have 13 out of, what was it, 2,400, that just seems such a low response, so I would say this is not a controversial issue at all.
Thank you, Chair. It is traditionally normal for us to get a fairly low response back to tariff and fee rises. What I would say is you have got one potentially from the Purbeck group of taxis, which would actually represent probably more than one person. But yeah, it is fairly normal to have a low response.
Any further questions? Councillor Fry.
Yeah, the fees are then putting us about 19 and 20 in the league table, so to speak. Are you happy that that is satisfactory, or would you like to be lower? What's your thoughts on that?
The league tables are there for comparators, what you'll find is that after April the 1st, there will be a huge switch around. So Bournemouth, for example, I know they're putting an 8% rise on their fees. That isn't reflected in the table yet. So even though if we were to put these fares in, we'd be 19 to 23 today, on the 2nd of April we probably wouldn't be, but I have no way of indicating where we would be.
Thank you. I've got a question.
Could I just follow up on the reply from Aileen there, Chair?
Of course.
Thank you. Members might find it helpful if, when the revised table is published early in the new financial year, we circulate that round and give you an update about where Dorset Council sits within that ranking.
Yes, thank you. Any further questions?
Just a comment, really, Madam Chairman. I remember when we were setting the fees for taxis in East Dorset, one of the comments that came was the fact that if you worked in Bournemouth, for example, you could pick up a fare and you could probably pick up a fare coming back to where you were. And I think one of the things that they mentioned was the fact that if they picked a fare up, say, in Wimborne, and took them out into the country, very often they would have to come back with no fare at all. So it was costing them more, if you see what I mean, because they didn't have that double thing. But I assume as there's not been too many responses, then they were quite happy over in our side of the world.
I think it's fair to say that the East Dorset drivers and the North Dorset drivers in particular are getting the most significant rise. So yes, I'm fairly confident that's why there's been no responses.
I'm pleased to hear that, Madam Chairman. And it's Councillor David Morgan.
Thank you for your comment, Councillor Morgan. Councillors, do you have any more questions or any comments that you would like to make? Councillor Fry?
Yeah, Councillor Les Fry, Dorchester West. The start time of the tariffs, does that come in at this point? Do we need to discuss that now?
You can. I've just got one comment on the fees that I just wanted to go over with, just to make sure that you were happy with that. Obviously, Aileen did touch on the fees about consider the reduction for a single car operator, because obviously that has been mentioned. I obviously just want to make sure that you are happy that the report is as it is, and that you're happy. You know, do you want to make any changes to that or not, or leave it as it is? I'm happy for it to be left as is. I just wanted to make sure, as it was something that Aileen pointed out and it has been asked by the trade. I just thought it was worth flagging that up with you. You're all content to leave that one as it is? Okay, that's the only query that I had really on the fees. So yeah, tariffs, yeah, Aileen put it all together. We are going to vote on this separately. We are going to do a fees and a tariff vote separately because Aileen has done a report as one, which makes sense. And yeah, we can ask the question, see if you want to move on to the tariffs, that's fine. We'll take the vote at the end. Did you have a question or comment on the tariff?
Well, Councillor Les Fry, Dorchester West, looking at the soiling charges, do we need to set that? Is that something that the drivers set themselves?
No, that's something that is set within our fees. So again, there would be, I say, 3 things that we need to consider. Aileen has obviously said that it's 2 of them that she would like to see within the tariff, and obviously one that we can consider, obviously, to reinstate the 30p extra person, which Aileen gave support that she would like to see that in there. Obviously, raising the soiling charge to £100. And the only other, if you're happy with this, we will vote to say that you're happy to take these changes into consideration. And the other one is obviously the time. Obviously, Aileen spoke about the timings, and obviously there have been questions around the timings. Obviously, currently at 11 p.m, but there has been a request for say 10:30. So, would you be minded to bring that timing forward? Open to you all.
Councillor Ayres, I'd like to bring that night time down to 10 o'clock. Suggest we bring that to 2200 hours, please. I'd like to recommend that the soiling charge goes to £100. Ironically, I have experience of that. My son came home in a taxi once, brought home, and my wife asked him what the fare was, and he saw the taxi. She then got out and actually cleaned it herself to avoid the charge at midnight or 1 o'clock. So £100 doesn't seem unreasonable. So thank you.
Councillor Fry. No, sorry, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Taylor, Chancellor St Mary, I'm back here. Yeah, I think we're looking for a seconder, are we, on that, Councillor Fry? Looking for a seconder? I'll second the motion, please.
Does anybody else have any comments that they would like to make on that? Also, I want to consider the three of them. So Councillor Fry's put forward for consider the time. Tariff 1 to Tariff 2 currently requested 11 p.m. to be changed to 10 p.m. and obviously raise the soiling charge to £100. Obviously, we do have the reinstate the 30p extra per person. Are you happy to agree on that as well? Okay. Do I have any further questions on either the fees or the tariffs? Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Carol Jones, Sturminster Newton. I'm just wondering about bringing the time forward from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m. I'm absolutely fine with that, but is there a particular issue, do you feel, Councillor Fry, between, and I'm actually asking for the officers as well, is that something we have to go back and consult on, or can we just simply change that time from 11 p.m. to 10 p.m?
Aileen.
Lawfully, we wouldn't have to go back and consult on that, because the whole purpose of advertising, going out to the consultation, is that it comes back and then you make the decisions on the comments. And what I would say is that we wouldn't be insisting that there is a calendarised tick over onto Tariff 2. So what would normally happen is the driver is responsible for putting it onto Tariff 2. They could, should they wish to, not put it onto Tariff 2 at that earlier time. The only thing that I would want to point out is that that request was made for the Dorset Council tariff, not the Dorset Council Weymouth tariff, so it would only apply to that one.
Should it apply Dorset-wide? If we try to be fair across the whole board, the whole way?
The Weymouth Taxi Association actually put in a full tariff card of what they requested. I would be loath to change that.
Are you happy with that reply, Councillor Fry? And are you happy with that, Councillor Jones? Yes. Okay. Do I have any further questions or comments on the fees or tariffs? No? Okay, so...
Sorry, Carol,
yeah.
just one thought. I understand the points were made on the cost of fuel and so on, but we are at it could just be for a 6-month period or whatever, but I would hate to see drivers to be financially disadvantaged if the fuel prices go far beyond what they are. I mean, in some of the press you hear of figures being quoted of up to £3 a litre for diesel, and I just wonder whether we should just leave a little door open a bit in case we need to come back and review this much more urgently. We need our taxi drivers, and we can't really have them sitting at home not being able to afford to fill up for the tariffs that they're being able to charge.
Aileen.
Thank you, Chair. Taxi fares are set by this committee, so we would normally review them every year, but there would be nothing to stop us bringing these back to you, say, in 3 months' time. I would say 3 months, because that would allow us to actually do the necessary consultation. So what we can do is we can track the fuel prices for a little bit, and then if we think that's necessary, I'm more than happy to bring that back.
I'm happy with that. I think that we just leave a little door open so that we can just keep an eye on this. We really don't know what's going to happen, and I'd rather we had the flexibility to deal with it quickly if we need to.
The good thing about this is we definitely do have flexibility, and I know that, you know, the officers that we have do keep a very close eye on anything that's changing, so I'm really comfortable with it is as it is. Okay. Do I have Councillor Fry?
Councillor Fry, does that mean if the prices go down significantly, so they don't do the fares?
I think the answer to that is going to be no.
Unless, of course, the trade requested it.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Brian, do you have any? No? No? All good? No? Pretty much most of mine have been covered. So, what I'll do, obviously, with the recommendations, obviously the recommendation is going to be that we take the, I'm going to do it in 2 parts. We're going to do the fees first. So I just want to know if you're happy and content that we take the fees as is, and if I could have a proposer and a seconder for that, please.
Happy to propose Carol Jones.
Very second.
So I've got Councillor Jones proposed, Councillor Taylor second. Can I ask all those that are in favour for that recommendation? Do you want me to read the recommendation out? That we agree the fees as they are? Do I have any against? Any abstentions? Then that vote is carried as unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the tariffs, and this one will be to obviously agree the tariffs, but obviously taking into the 3 changes that we have made, which is the timings now to 2,200 hours, to reinstate the 30p extra person, and to raise the soiling charge to £100. And I am happy to propose that with those changes. Can I have a seconder, please? Got a seconder from Councillor Jones. Can I ask all those in favour? Any against? Any abstain? Okay. That is also carried with those changes. Thank you. Can I just say as well, I want to say a huge thank you to our officers for such a really detailed and good report. As always, I can't ever fault the reports we get from licensing, and I'm very, very lucky to be part of the licensing committee. And I'd also like to say a big thank you to the trade, who took the time to comment on this as well for the fares and fees. So a big thank you to those of them that put their concerns and their questions to us. Okay. Do we have any urgent items? Do we have any exempt business? Okay, I will declare this meeting closed. Thank you.